Now, there's much to discuss tonight. The big news here is that Boris Johnson may very well put the country into the ice age of a new tier. Tier 5, Tier 6, Tier 7, who knows? The tiers of a clown. A lockdown that started too late and finished too early and has lurched, veered, ricocheted from one policy direction to another. It's only a couple of months ago that the country was paying people like me half my restaurant bills. Eat out to help out, they said. Though it may well turn out that we didn't help out at all. We may have helped out McDonald's, but we didn't help out all those people that caught the coronavirus in the crowded restaurants that we had paid people to go to. This government is in such a shambles that it first said the schools were going back tomorrow or later this week, and then quietly, with the stroke of an internet pen, told London parents that their children would not, after all, be going back next week or for the foreseeable. There are places in the country that are going back tomorrow, other places going back next week. Some, like Eton, the most expensive and famous public school in the world, by public I mean private, is not going back at all. And yet it would appear that absolutely nothing has been done to institute a series of learning online or taking over a television station. Channel 5 springs to mind. Nobody watches it anyway. And teaching our children through the television so that they don't have to go to school, but neither do they have to revert to a feral state, learning nothing at all. Ditto with the vaccine. The vaccine for which, thank goodness, Britain has played a significant role, particularly at Oxford University. Thank God for Oxford University. Thank God it's in our country. Thank God for the people who came up with the Oxford University vaccine. But the problem now is even people in their 90s don't have a date by which they will get it. It would appear that despite praying for and knowing that one day we'd have a vaccine, nobody has prepared how we're going to deliver it. Can you believe that? They're now scrambling as to how to deliver a vaccine that we've known for months was in the pipeline. What kind of government is as stupid as that? Well, the kind of government we've got in Westminster and at Holyrood in Scotland, in Edinburgh. These two governments are now like rabbits in the headlights, not knowing when and to whom they are going to deliver this vaccine. My own mother, God preserve her, is 85 years old. And when I said on Twitter that despite constantly phoning her GP, her doctor, she has absolutely no idea when she's going to get it, how she's going to get it, I was then answered by a whole raft of people whose parents are even older than my mother, some in their 90s, who haven't heard a cheep from the government. And when you try to get an answer from the government, north and south, Edinburgh and London, answer comes there none. So if Boris Johnson does end all activity in this country this week, that may cut the infection rates, which seem to be vaultingly high. It may take pressure off the National Health Service. But for how long? According to the Scottish government, people in their 50s will not get this vaccine until June of this year, until the summertime. And we're in the depths of winter. How can that be in a country of 5 million people? What are we going to do? Lock down till June? If we do, what happens to life? What happens to commerce? What happens to industry? What happens to education? June, and that's the over 50s. The rest of you, go tell it to the Marines. I tell you, we have never been governed by a more motley, a more mercenary, and a more maddening crew than we currently are. It's no surprise to me that mental health problems in this country equally are vaulting, that suicides in this country equally are vaulting. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. We've got a poll on it. Should Boris Johnson announce a total lockdown this week? Yes or no? Or comment underneath my tweet as to what you think about this matter. The big news in the United States is that there's going to be a last-ditch effort to keep Donald Trump in the White House. Now, I don't think it's going to succeed, do you? Tell me if you do, either by phone or by Twitter. But there is going to be a serious effort made, and Trump is talking up the possibility that there will be no President Joe Biden. There will be no Vice President Kamala Harris. There will be no inauguration later in this month for the Democratic Party's presidency-elect. How can this be? How can the most powerful country in the world have institutions so unfit for purpose that even this day we do not know who is going to be the president by the end of this week? On the 6th, there's going to be a very big demonstration indeed. Trump, admittedly something which the hyperbole of whom is infamous, braggadocio even, he says there's going to be 1 million people there. If there is 1 million people there, will that demonstration get out of control? Given some of the elements that are flocking to his standards, there's every possibility of serious violence in Washington, D.C. For me, the United States has always been just another country. It's never been my father. It's never been my leader. I never recognized it as the leader of what they laughingly call the free world. But neither do I want to see the people of the United States, whom I love and know well, go into a tumultuous period of violence and uncertainty alongside a depression as great as that in the 1930s, alongside a deadly pandemic which is cutting them down in unprecedented numbers. Well over 300,000 people now dead in the United States. Some states of the United States, like Florida, like California, now have death rates far higher than many countries elsewhere in the world. So we'll be talking, as I said, to Caleb Maupin, my favorite American commentator, about what happens next in the United States. But the main burden of my remarks this evening, and I think the main topic of discussion, is what's going to happen at the Old Bailey in London tomorrow. Julian Assange not only committed no crime, he exposed crime. Not only is he not a criminal, he exposed the criminals. But the criminals have made it a crime to report on the crimes that they committed. Now, I was in the British Parliament and opposing the current extradition treaty that Britain has with the United States. I spoke to the man who wrote it, whose signature at least is on it, now Lord Blunkett, then David Blunkett, the British Home Secretary, who introduced this new extradition treaty during the summer holidays when no one was there to hold him to account, to scrutinize its terms. But when I bearded him about the terms of the new extradition treaty, I laid out exactly the kind of case that we now have with Julian Assange. I said the United States may very well seek to extradite either an American dissident who is opposing their foreign policy from Britain, or maybe even, I said, a complete foreigner who owes no allegiance to the United States, who's sworn no allegiance to the United States, committed no crime in the United States, may never have even been in the United States, might not even be British, might just be in London and be seized on the orders of the United States and extradited under your new treaty. He said to me, "Dear boy, you are panicking unnecessarily because it is written on the face of the treaty that political crimes are not extraditable." Well, what is Julian Assange accused of other than the political crime of exposing the war crimes of the United States empire? And not just the United States empire, but the crimes of people all over the world, public and private, friends and foes, were exposed by Julian Assange and the WikiLeaks that he founded and led. And therefore, it ought to have taken no more than a moment for the British judge to say to the US government, your bid for extradition fails because you're accusing this man of political offenses, and they are specifically proscribed in the treaty. But it hasn't taken but a moment. Julian Assange has been in a maximum security prison for well over 1 year and now shivers in the cold without his winter clothes, which lie in the basement of the jail and have not been given to him in absolute contravention of the law as an untried prisoner convicted of nothing. But coronavirus is swirling in the jail and cutting people down, staff and inmates alike, in alarming numbers. So tomorrow, she delivers her verdict after a series of proceedings which have oftentimes descended to tragedy and farce in the one play. The abuse of process, which I could adumbrate for the rest of the night, again should have seen the case thrown out of court without any further debate. Let me just give you two. The United States was spying on Julian Assange in the Ecuador embassy, including, most importantly, on his legal discussions with his lawyers about the charges being brought against him by the United States. End of story, end of trial. In any jurisdiction worthy of the name anywhere in the world, if the prosecuting authority have been spying, recording, and retaining the very words being spoken by the accused and his lawyers, the case falls. It's a corruption of the judicial process and would be anywhere else in the world. The second reason why the process itself should have been enough to bring this miserable saga to an end is that the United States was not just spying on Julian Assange, but openly, amongst themselves, plotted to kill him. And yet we're asked to believe that he can go to the United States on an extradition request and receive a fair trial. A fair trial. A man that the United States government openly discussed murdering in London in a sovereign embassy belonging to the South American state of Ecuador. And then there's the issues that he's going to be tried on in the United States themselves. And I sum it up in one sentence. Julian Assange should be given the Nobel Prize for revealing the crimes carried out in Afghanistan and in Iraq by the United States government and its allied governments. He shouldn't be prosecuted. He should be praised. He shouldn't be imprisoned. He should be enshrined as an example of what journalism and publishing is supposed to mean in a free society. It's all coming up over the next 2.5 hours or more here on the mother of all talk shows.